everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm going to be talking about the importance of tolerating uncertainty. So, Sirun, I apologise. You just said you hated it. So
Wrong way.
No, it's reversed.
Yeah. Yes. So, when is a mess not a mess? Because quite often we use chaos and mess as synonyms. We use them to mean the same thing. But sometimes what we're really talking about is complexity. And what we have, when we see disorder, sometimes it contains order within it. It might not be obvious at first glance. For example, sometimes it's complicated. This is the kind of thing that happens when you have 15 or 16 people responding to a text and you have got one person trying to combine and reconcile and organize quite a lot of complicated relationships and links. It's not something to be proud of. It's not a clear and elegant presentation. Photo credit to Sil, who you may have met earlier today, and he was kind enough to give a title to this photograph of Another Type of Structured Notes. It might make more sense if you can see what it was that we were responding to, but actually you had to be there. What we have here is something which is a means to an end. It's a stage in a process. Because sometimes what we do is we have to resist the temptation to make something tidy before it becomes interesting. Alternatively, that was an English classroom, believe it or not, in physical or mathematical terms, chaos can be described as a more dynamic system, where you have something happening where the behavior, as it says, is so unpredictable as to appear random, owing to sensitivity to small changes in conditions. And you can capture this in a set of differential equations. Okay? This is a Lorentz attraction. Look it up, unless you already know. But what we have here is we have a situation where the universal laws apply. There are rules that exist, but the outcome is unpredictable. Here's an animation. We weren't certain it was going to work. But what I'd like you to do is to just let your attention become absorbed. Because what we have here is something where we have the rules of possibly hydrodynamics. We have real-world examples represented by this motion, which are to do with the behavior of a pinball machine, where the rules of gravitational rolling or elastic collisions apply, but the outcome is uncertain. We don't know what is going to happen next. Now, we have in our minds a possible sense where you temporarily absorbed in the movement of that little dot. If you can achieve a sense of being fully absorbed in an activity to the point where you become less aware of your physical surroundings, this is something which is called flow, according to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, a Hungarian-American psychologist. And it's to do with a state of being a relaxed alertness, alpha brain waves. You can get lost in the activity in which you are absorbing yourself. we've just been talking about fluid motion, and a very convenient example of these two forms of flow is my brother, Paul. Because he's a scientist, but he can also be found in a trance up to his waist in cold water in the middle of a rocky river, as he's a practitioner of tenkara, which is a traditional, ancient, Japanese form of mountain fly fishing. It's very specific. And what he does is he walks beside the river, or in the river, merging his mind with the motion and the behavior of the water, its unpredictable reactions to the rocks in the river, and the psychology of the fish. Seriously. And then he'll wake up out of his trance, about 8 kilometres away from where he started out, not really with a clear idea of where he is or how to get back to where he started out from. But he's good at climbing, it's okay. Up embankments, over fences, through people's gardens. This state of flow means that what is happening is not really part of the rational mind. This is something where you have a level of automaticity of your skills, where you're just letting your mental processes present you with solutions. It also happens when he's making this kind of thing. And this is to tempt the fish. And there's about 3 people on planet Earth who either know or care how you make these, because the techniques are really quite specialized. But also what you have to do to be able to make one of these is to just have a feeling of what's going to appeal to a mountain trout. Now, this leads me from fish in a logical but unpredictable way to the poet Keats and my former dance teacher, Zahara, because they were both practitioners of negative capability. Now, this was a small idea. There's one reference. It's a letter in a letter from Keats, the poet Keats, to his brother. He's trying to get a message across, and he defines negative capability like this, which is when you can tolerate being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after facts and reason, remaining content with half knowledge. What's he talking about? Possibly the ability to tolerate uncertainty. Now, if you go dancing with Zahara, believe me, there's an awful lot of uncertainty that you have to tolerate. Because what we had to do was to follow her improvisations in public, in front of hundreds of people, and she would move in the way that the spirits of the music were telling her to move. We didn't have much opportunity to be consciously thinking about left or right, elbows, shoulders, how many times to spin round. Quite often we didn't know where it was all going to end up. And sometimes she'd shout at us, encouragingly, just let your mind go blank. And honestly, that was the best way to survive to dance another day. When we were making the costumes, there wasn't a pattern book. There wasn't a design manual. There wasn't a Pinterest mood board. It was a case of, oh, find some scraps, do some patchwork, make your pom-poms to get this junkyard chic. I weighed it once. My costume weighed 6 kilos. Right? But when it's all together, in movement, it looked good. There were underlying rules to the movement, but actually there were the opportunities for elastic collisions. They were quite high to crash. So we had to avoid falling down, but just to try to keep it together. If you're a fan of Philip Pullman, the novelist, you'll know that negative capability is how Lyra reads the alethiometer, which is a device for telling the truth. That's a picture and a chart. The whole lot is the total invention of the novelist's imagination, although it looks quite convincing. Okay. It can only be used if you let your mind relax and allow it to travel across the strong lines of influence and ignore what's irrelevant. You can't force or rush to a foregone conclusion. So what it all means is that, in my opinion, what you need for creativity is 3 things. You need to have some sort of raw material. Now, that raw material can be bits of feathers, tubes of paint, random ideas that don't make any sense at all. Then you have to bring to it the skills that you have, and the ones that you don't consciously think about anymore, you just somehow know how to do it. You're not afraid of unpredictable processes, and then out of that, you will get your unforced creative outcome. Another example of an occasion where I had been asked to do something, and I was up a ladder painting 5 meters of scenery during the dress rehearsal of a performance, again with an audience, intended audience for hundreds of people. You might ask, oh, how did you end up there? Surprising, the things you end up doing when your students ask you nicely. And I was trying to paint the 19th century London skyline for the performance. And I couldn't see what I was painting, partly because it was 5 meters tall, and I was up a ladder, and my face was this far away, partly because they were rehearsing, and the red spotlights and the green spotlights and all the rest of it bleached out the whole colour. I couldn't see what I was painting. I was painting against the clock, and I thought, oh, just shut your mind, just do it. So I kept going. I climbed down off the ladder. I went to the back of the auditorium. The dress rehearsal was over, and honestly, to my surprise, it looked great. So that was a present from a part of my mind. Then I must have had something that was helping me, that was not consciously looking, measuring, and choosing colours. And perhaps it was because it was a bit of an urgent situation. There's another technique that you can use for creative writing, which is called automatic writing. And what you have to do is, there are exercises where you have to achieve the impossible, which is to get your pen moving faster than your brain. And then you get a surprising mess. That's then your raw material, and then you can apply selection and editorial processes. So, I suggest you give it a try and see what happens. Come and see me sometime if you'd like to do it. Because I think that if you try it out, you might be surprised by your chaotic creativity. Thank you very much.